So, Mandir, what do you believe are the most significant opportunities that AI will bring to procurement?
Simply put, I think there is a fantastic opportunity for the procurement community to elevate its game and get out of the busy work and focus on what we have always wanted to focus on, things like category management, strategic sourcing, supplier relationship management. So imagine if the AI would take care of the legwork that is so time consuming. And in a separate episode, Daniel, we discussed about this excuse that we tend to always bring up time and we don't have time because
Mm,
we're always pulled into reactive work and also time consuming activities. So imagine the AI taking care of the legwork, becoming your assistant to crunch the numbers, to summarize documentation, right? And you would be focusing on the consumption of that insight in support of your strategic work. So I think super high level, that's what I believe the biggest opportunity is.
just Mandir, actually, when you were talking there about the legwork, being your assistant, and things like that, I think that is going to be incredibly powerful for teams moving forwards, and being able to concentrate. You gave three really good examples there. I like that you mentioned category management because it's often used in some places, not really quite done how people want. But SRM is the one that I always pick up on here, which is I actually spoke with someone in season one of this podcast called Matthew Booth, and we kind of deep dived into SRM, and this was just one of those areas where I think we combined time in procurement of over probably like 40 years between us, never seen it done properly. And it's normally because it's the last priority. Yeah, it can make such a huge difference. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Absolutely. And you mentioned SRM, and it's a shame, right? All the hard work that went into, all that those tears, sweat, and blood that went into the negotiation of a contract. And then because you're lacking the SRM capability, you're not extracting maximum value from, that contract, right? So like you move on to next contract and then the other one and then the next RFP or whatever. And then the SRM is not attended to. So I fully agree with that statement.
Yeah, it's a wild way of doing it when you just take a minute to think it through. But awesome. We're going to move on to question two here on AI questions. And for everyone listening, this is the first time we've tried these questions out. So really excited to hear Mundir's answers here. But what would be your must-have AI capabilities for procurement teams? So this can be kind of thinking about the types of technology. You mentioned a couple actually just there in the answer that got my attention. You mentioned summarization of documentation, could be a really kind of useful practical application of AI. I'd just be really curious to hear any of your thoughts there around that.
Yeah. Maybe before, diving deep into answering this question, Daniel, I would take a step back and say, for starters, procurement organizations need to be use case ready. So we need to set up, imagine what is the art of the possible in terms of AI usability, right? And while we're watching the hype cycle of AI and some companies are saying, yeah, okay, we'll make it in-house. Some other companies are like taking a more prudent approach and watching and seeing. Maybe, they're not making an investment right away, waiting to watch, how that hype cycle will be plateauing and then at some point, I would imagine all this would be democratized. And once that happens, then what is the differentiator for procurement people, right? That's where you get into things like, what are you going to do with it? So I think procurement organizations need to make right away this conscious decision to upskill and reskill procurement people so that they are AI ready, so that they are relevant and they keep being relevant when AI takes over, the legwork again.
I actually think that was a really good way just to frame that question there. It just to kind of come back to it in terms of you mentioned like it almost feels like the way it's going. It's like everyone's going to have access to the same AI everywhere, regardless. It's actually, one of the reasons at Gatekeeper we didn't deploy AI immediately. Like we saw loads of our competitors just deploying AI, and kind of sometimes felt like it was being deployed for the sake of being AI, not for the sake of actually helping us. So we were like, let's just take a step back. What's actually happening here? We're like, oh, OpenAI are doing amazing stuff. You've got various other large language models really taking off, owned by some of the biggest companies, Amazon, Google, uh, Facebook, or Meta, right? Like, what's the end goal here? The end goal is ultimately they're all going to do something very similar. Everyone's going to have access to the same things. So it's just building the right use case, hopefully, for the team. But everyone's going to largely use the same models. So there's no point making our own models because these teams look at OpenAI's funding is astronomical, right? And you just can't compete with that level of expertise in house that they've got, or the funding. So yeah, I'm with you in terms of it feels like we're all going in the same direction. But I appreciate I just cut you off as you were going to perhaps talk about some practical use cases and elements there.
No, that was good. That was good. Yeah, practical use case, and we're looking at them even here at CAE, right, where I work from a we call ourselves GPSM, Global Procurement and Supply Management. One of the things that we're looking at is how do you consume data and analytics insight? Imagine, Daniel, if once you've implemented that, right? Assuming implementation of it is done right, your data in the previous episode we spoke about not rushing into procuring technology, but fix your people and processes first. And also, by the same token, take care of your data. Without it, you don't have the lifeblood that goes into the muscle, which is the technology, right? So imagine we've taken care of the data, we've taken care of the people, skilling, upskilling, reskilling, and we've taken care of documenting robust and executable processes. Then you layer the AI muscle on top of that. You've negotiated a contract with company ABC for based on a minimum commitment, right? Let's say 5 years. Halfway through the contract cycle, the AI thing would trigger an insight recommendation saying, hey, Daniel, you are about to bust that minimum commitment halfway through the contract. You should be considering an early negotiation with company ABC now that you have leverage, not wait until the contract has expired. So, and then the category manager would be having that dashboard and saying, oh, okay, then competing insights, waiting for actioning. And then the category manager would be prioritizing what insight he would be actioning or she would be actioning. One of
Yeah.
the many use cases, right?
Yeah, the task management one's super interesting, right? Because we're limited as humans about processing the vast amounts of data available to us, hopefully that are available to us. And AI just has a huge leg up on us there. We should absolutely make use of that superpower of it and see if it can say, actually, we've got these three tasks here that you might not even know about, e.g., you know, you're going to blow this consumption out of the water halfway through. This might be
Yeah.
a good time to leverage your relationship. Yeah, I like that one
Another
a
one,
lot.
right? Another one. You've negotiated, I don't know, a swap right mechanism in a contract. And this takes us back to supplier relationship management as well, right?
Mm.
Swap right provision, you really, worked hard with your supplier to negotiate that into the contract. Not everybody gives that away, by the way, especially the technology providers, but you've managed to secure that provision, right? But then maybe nobody executes on it, right? You end up having shelfware in your organization. So again, same insight. Hey, you should be looking at maybe swapping these SKUs out for those SKUs because you're not extracting value from them. And you have in your contract, I know this provision, right? So
Yeah.
make use of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I am actually really excited by almost like the data mining of contracts at scale, because there's so much value that is potentially going to be unlocked if we can just access the right information. I think so many people have issues with that entire process. So yeah, I really like those, Mandir. All right, Mandir, we're going to we've this last question I want to ask you about AI is One that has cropped up, honestly, in the last 2 years, every time I've had a conversation with someone in procurement who's usually a skeptic of AI or there's some sort of bias, but equally, I think there's a lot of interest in it, which is many people fear that AI could start to replace roles, which is it's kind of scary. We've just kind of talked about the possibility of AI doing some of the legwork. And we both know that there are roles which are at the moment dedicated to the legwork. There is a bit of a risk there. But what role do you think procurement professionals will play in sort of an AI powered future? Is this removal of the legwork there to hopefully keep kind of the existing headcount become sort of AI augmented to then go do work that we're not even doing today? You mentioned, I'm going to keep coming back to in one point you mentioned SRM.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think you answered the question. I think you answered the question in AI powered world,
I shouldn't have
right?
done that, should I?
Yeah, you stole my candor.
Sorry about that.
But to be honest, I really don't believe that AI will be replacing people. If anything, it will be keeping us honest. I think, right? I think we would be put on the spot as procurement people with this question. Now that you have AI that takes care of the legwork again, what are you going to do with it, right? And that's why I mentioned earlier in this conversation, people need to start right now. Procurement organization needs to start right now as part of their talent development strategy to future proof their pool of talent for a world where AI is taking care of, the heavy duty, legwork, and then you are taking care of the more strategic work, right? What what are you consuming from that insight? How are you differentiating yourself now? And I think that's where, when the technology becomes a commodity, I think things like communication mastery, leadership skills, right, business acumen, political acumen will be the game changers.
That's going to that bit there is going to make a perfect clip and from this session. Is that was a really good answer. I really liked that. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm I'm aligned with my thinking with you somewhat there. I think there will be some cuts in some orgs. Like we will just see some ruthlessness from some various organizations, of course. But my hope is there will be this new generation of roles, not just in procurement, but just in almost stuff that we can't even think about yet. That hopefully comes out
Mm.
of there. So I think there will be some really cool stuff with procurement. I think maybe a focus on relationship management could be really interesting to see, like proper relationship management. I don't think many people do it well at the moment from a procurement angle. So yeah, really exciting times, scary times for some. We'll see. We're going to move on to these quick fire questions now, Mandir, and these are a set of questions that I ask everyone, and I can't remember. We've done this with quite a few people so far, and almost every answer has been different in this season. We did different quickfire questions in season one. Kind of all guests kind of had similar answers, so I'm happy with these questions so far. But I'm really keen to hear about what your favorite book is, whether it's a procurement book or just a general sort of business, whatever book that's helped you with so far in your procurement career.
Yeah, great question. And there's plenty of great books out there, right? But one of the better ones I've read recently is called Idea Flow by Jeremy Utley and Perry Cleben. And what it says, actually, I'm trying to summarize the book there is it's all about maintaining an innovation pipeline within the organization. So the innovation index there is the amount of ideas that an organization can generate in a given amount of time so that problems are no longer problems, but they are looked at as opportunities for solutions. And one of
You
the
you
lines in
sold
the
this to
book
me,
is
by the way.
called, oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
I've literally just searched for it as we're talking. I've not seen this book, by the way, and already it's just got my interest. Sorry, you say
right.
one of the lines in the book?
Yeah, one of the lines is the book in the book says every problem is an idea problem. So then, problems would become your best friends because you will be in search of those good quality problems. So you prioritize what problem to address. Maintaining that pipeline of problems will fuel that innovation pipeline. And the book also gives very good recommendations and practical frameworks to execute on the theory. So it's not only theory, but it's also really practical tips and insight how you can execute that in various, domains, right? I saw very good, procurement use cases for it. And I said to my team, I give them like, I recommended that they read it first. And then I said, okay, let's establish an idea flow initiative whereby maybe we will be appointing problem collectors. Danny, when you go to a meeting and then there is the agenda of the meeting, but then people start, talking about other things.
Yeah, well
Good
aware.
conversations, good conversations, but they are not the purpose of the meeting. But those good conversations are captured nowhere, and they go to waste. So what I said to the team, maybe secretly, we would need to appoint some problem catchers. They go to those conversations whenever somebody raises a good problem, document it. So we have like a log of good problems. And then we would sit and say, okay, let's prioritize the problems that we would like to address. Sometimes, even in those discussions, people start solutioning. It's okay. Type in those solutions as well, and then they will be competing. And so, yeah, I know. I got super excited about this.
I loved it.
Um,
Absolutely. By the way, I'm enjoying the excitement because it's got my mind ticking over because I have a lot of current problems in my new role that are a good. I see them as good opportunities, but they're never ending, and I'm not probably documenting them in a structured way. So I'm gonna buy this book after we finish talking. On
I
my
can have
Kindle.
it in front of me if you want to see the cover of it.
Yeah, that's nice. It's a nice cover. Yeah, I will. I'll pick it up. I'm traveling a bit over the next couple of weeks for work, for conferences and stuff. So I will give that a read. Awesome. I'm well happy with that answer, Mindir. That's amazing. Moving on to the next quick fire. What skill do you believe is the most crucial, most important for any procurement pro to develop today? And I appreciate we've just been talking about AI. I'm curious, is sort of that AI knowledge up there for you, or is it something else? A bit more of a, I hate the term soft skills, by the way, but is it more there? I'm really curious.
Yeah. And you hate the term soft skills. I call them power skills,
So much better.
right?
Yeah.
And, back to the AI conversation, maybe a skill associated with that is, the differentiator would be the degree of your prompting skills, right? We all have access to ChatGPT, but the output would be different depending on how you frame the prompting element of it, and then how you keep refining that conversation with ChatGPT, right? So that you can get a decent output of it. But that's not what I was going to mention in terms of skills. I feel like you wanted to, add something.
No, I'm excited. No, all good. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm
But
interested to
back
hear this.
back to soft skills slash power skills, two that come to mind: communication mastery and learning agility. Communication mastery for procurement people. At the end of the day, we're the internal salesperson that pitch procurement recommendations to our executive team, right? So if you're not equipped with solid storytelling foundation, even if your procurement activity was fantastic, but you failed to frame the messaging to the right audience, then you're not getting the buy-in and you end up being frustrated, even if you spend hours and weeks into that category strategy that you've been developing or strategic sourcing project or whatever you're pitching internally. So I think communication, I would add to it, we're also internal translators. If you flip the flow, you as a procurement person, ingest the problems again from your stakeholders and then translate them into actionable procurement strategies. It takes communication mastery to do that, right? So that's the communication piece. Learning agility, again, back to our AI conversation. If you're not agile, you're not a lifelong learner, one that never stops learning, and if you're not managing your ego to make the conscious decision to unlearn certain things because they are no longer relevant, and you need to adapt to the new dynamics, then you're no longer relevant. And I go back to your one of your lines: don't become a procurement dinosaur. So if you don't have that learning agility, right, then you're becoming ultimately that dinosaur in this way.
Yeah, by the way, I'm really bullish on always learning new skills, whether it's through reading books and then trying to take some of the points, make your own frameworks. If the book already provides the framework, even better, and then trying to test it out in a variety of different scenarios. So yeah, and you just mentioned that we've got AI on the horizon. It's here. It's doing stuff. Keeping up to date. Prompt engineering. I do think we should all just master prompting, natural language prompting, and then my tie there to one of your points is on communication. Prompting is often a byproduct of your ability to clearly or to articulate your vision. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, I love this, Minda. This has been a really fun conversation so far. I've got a couple more questions.
I'm
This next one, do you have any events, procurement events, industry events that you recommend to people?
There's plenty of them, right? Big production ones. I'm not naming companies, right? But those big research and insight industry insight providers. But then the ones that I really value, Daniel, are those that are community led. One of them is ProcureCon, for example. I attended one back in June in Boston, and what I appreciate, and for the first time, by the way, what I appreciated from the event is that people like you and I, practitioners or procurement leaders, come in with real problems, with real stories, and sharing them with the community. That community coming from diverse industries and sectors, right? And sharing and socializing those ideas and networking. So that's the type of procurement event that I tend to appreciate. But yeah,
Yeah, I've just on ProcureCon. I've actually never been to a ProcureCon. At times I'd heard mixed things about ProcureCon, but recently, I'd say, and I mean this, like the last few years, just non-stop positivity around that event. And I've seen some of the images and videos and stuff from that event. Looks good. So yeah, I'll see if I can go to one at some point. I mean, we're always looking for events at Gatekeeper as well to attend. So it's kind of I'm selfishly asking this for myself and Gatekeeper in many ways, but
right.
ProcureCon sounds, yeah, the community focus is extremely powerful there. So no, that's amazing.
Maybe I can
Yeah,
add another one if I have like a bonus
yeah,
answer
of
there.
course you can.
Well, at the end of the day, also as procurement professionals, we are building alliances with our suppliers that become partners, right? So whenever there is a genuine, right? I'm consciously using a genuine case study to be showcased because you worked with X supplier that become a partner, and then you can go on stage and showcase that success story in one of their events. And the big vendors, they have their annual events, and sometimes they look for procurement people to take the stage and showcase their collaboration. That's also a good avenue to build the network, connect with the community, and also establish solid relationships with your vendors.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a sort of black and white activities that most would associate with relationship building to actually build a relationship. I think those kind of points you just mentioned can build a relationship way faster than that quarterly business review that you
Absolutely.
may have. So, no, that's amazing. Curious on this next question. What's the best piece of advice you've had in your career so far?
The business doesn't care who does what. They just need an easy button. I think
Yeah.
that really resonated with me. And, that is acting as like a North Star statement for most of the initiatives that we're leading as a team, right? At the end of the day, if you explain to your stakeholder that, that team is doing this and that procurement team is doing that, and to them, you're not speaking their language and they don't care. Just give me that easy button
So
and
true.
I'm happy.
Yeah, I love that. I think more people in procurement need to think about that easy button, Mundir, for sure. I li- I really like that. Final question, Mandir. I'm sad to be ending this conversation with you over 2 separate days, but who do you follow or who do you consider to be a thought leader in the procurement space? This, by the way, I always bring this caveat into this question. This doesn't have to be someone who has lots of followers on social media. Like it could be, Jane, who no one knows about outside of a workplace, who's just absolutely a superstar.
Yeah, I like Tom Mills.
You're not
I
allowed to
think
say
that
Tom Mills anymore. No,
oh,
everyone. I'm joking. And Tom, we appreciate.
he provides practical recommendations, right, and frameworks.
Absolutely.
He's so
So good.
generous, and he comes across as a very, genuine gentleman. Some people from my team are also interacting with him on a regular
Oh,
basis.
nice.
They're attending some of his classes, and you know,
Yeah.
they're getting very good insight that we're amplifying internally within the organization. But there's also
Oh,
another
that's good to
guy
hear.
who's not bad too, Daniel Barnes. I think
No, no,
be honest with you,
no, let's bring me into this.
before this session, I subscribe to your newsletter, and you
Yeah.
provide some good insight that I'm sharing with the team as well. And again, I love the "Don't Become the Procurement Dinosaur." It's so
Yeah.
impactful.
I'm a big fan of that. Yeah, just I knew we had a conversation. I think last week, or last week before we started recording, and we are kind of talking about doing more like public content and things like that to push us outside of our comfort zones, right? And it is something that you had mentioned, and that newsletter has kind of for a number of years just been my little outlet to like do something and just share like nerdy stuff that I know only like 1% of the world, 1% of procurement people actually care about. But I just think like those 1% of people who are nerd out on it will probably get some real big benefits from it. So that's kind of the only aim there, really. Yeah, I like
And to
that
be honest
window.
with you, that's very inspirational. Thank you for sharing that with me, because my boss is expecting me now to start producing some newsletter and doing some podcasts. And I
I
thought
would.
by doing this, and I hope he's listening to this podcast, you can see that check on my development plan. First podcast ever. This is the one.
Well, by the way, you've done amazing for a first podcast. I've been hosting podcasts since pretty much since COVID happened. I started my first ever podcast, I want to say a week after, not by design. It wasn't me taking advantage of COVID, but I did take advantage of everyone being at home and being accessible. But I still get nervous every time I come on to host anything. It's always a strange experience. You never know what's going to happen. But Mandir, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Really appreciate your insights, your time, and good conversation. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thanks for the opportunity.